Another way of shading is using something called hatching. These are marks that basically imply shading, and instead of using a soft variant, it basically is consisting of a series of lines. Now, the interesting thing about shading is that if you have a surface, the closer these lines are, notice the more concentrated and dark that area becomes. However, when I spread these lines further out, you can see that the object appears to be lighter. So if you're trying to imply a dark area, then you're going to position your lines really close to one another. And sometimes you'll see hatching used in illustration purposes, right? Hatching can take on several different qualities. They can be vertical, they can be at angles, they can be like a kind of like a pattern, like a herringbone pattern type of thing. So there's different types of cross hatching or shading, and you can also take your lines and you can layer them by adding shading like this. The important thing to consider is that the shading should always help define the surface that you're trying to create. So if you have a really round object, it won't necessarily make sense to have straight lines for your hatching, but rather to consider the fact that your hatching might also be round. So it kind of ascribes to the form that is being described. So, you know, maybe as we get, if this the light source is coming from in this direction over here, maybe with our hatching we'll see more overlap between our shading to kind of imply a darker surface, and we might see less of that overlap in the areas that are receiving more light. So both types of shading are present in drawings. You have to just figure out what makes the most sense for you. You know, for your first assignment, what I'd like for you to do is I'd like for you to focus on the soft way of shading, because I want you to practice being able to go from light to dark with a soft round brush. I think it's just easier to mimic. It's not going to take you as much time. This method can be pretty intense. It can take a lot more time to do it right. So that's a little bit of a exercise in cross hatching and shading. We'll talk more about this when we start talking about inking, because this is a great technique that you can use not only in penciling but also inking as well. So just wanted to go ahead and share that with you. Cross hatching is another way that you can imply not only shading, but you can also imply texture with cross hatching as well. In the next video, we'll talk about, you know, your assignment, and we'll talk about how do you set things up. I'll actually go ahead and do a version of your assignment, and I'll post an example so that you can see what it will look like. So I'll see you in the next video.